Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Let's Master English. My name is Sarah, and I am so happy you're here with me today. Go ahead and get comfortable because today we are going to talk about a powerful idea. It's a secret that successful people in business, sports, and science have used for over 100 years to get amazing results. And the best part? We can use this exact same secret to learn English faster and more effectively. This idea is often called the 80-20 rule. You might be thinking, what is the 80-20 rule? Well, let me ask you a question. Open your closet and look at your clothes. How many of them do you wear regularly? If you are like most people, you probably wear about 20% of your clothes 80% of the time. You have your favorite jeans, your favorite sweater, a few favorite t-shirts that you wear again and again. The rest of your clothes just sit there, waiting for a special occasion. This is a simple example of a universal principle discovered by an Italian economist named Vilfredo Pareto over a century ago. He noticed that 80% of the land in Italy was owned by only 20% of the people. He then saw this pattern everywhere. He saw that 80% of the peas in his garden came from only 20% of the pea pod plants. This idea became known as the Pareto principle, or the 80-20 rule. It states that for many events, roughly 80% of the results come from 20% of the effort. In business, 80% of sales often come from 20% of customers. In software, 80% of crashes are caused by 20% of the bugs. In your life, 80% of your happiness might come from 20% of your relationships. This is not a magic law, but it is a powerful observation about the world that not all effort is created equal. Some things we do are incredibly important and produce huge results. Other things we do don't really matter that much. Now, here is the exciting part for us. This same principle applies directly to learning English. When you think about the English language, it feels huge, right? There are hundreds of thousands of words, complex grammar rules, confusing pronunciation. It can feel overwhelming. But what if I told you that you don't need to learn 100% of the language to be fluent? What if you could achieve 80% of your fluency by focusing on just the most important 20% of English? This is what we are going to explore today. We are going to stop trying to do everything at once. We are going to work smarter, not just harder. As author Richard Koch writes in his book, The 80-20 Principle. The 80-20 principle asserts that a minority of causes, inputs, or effort usually lead to a majority of the results, outputs, or rewards. Our job as smart English learners is to find that minority of effort, that vital 20%, and focus on it with all our energy. Today, we will identify the 20% of vocabulary, grammar, skills, and topics that will give you 80% of your desired results in speaking and understanding English. Are you ready to stop wasting time and start focusing on what truly matters? Let's begin. Part 1. The 20% of vocabulary. Focusing on high-frequency words. Let's start with the biggest and most intimidating part of learning English, vocabulary. The Oxford English Dictionary contains over 170,000 words that are in current use. When you hear a number like that, it's easy to feel hopeless. How could anyone ever learn that many words? Well, here is the good news. You absolutely do not need to. In fact, a very small number of words are used most of the time. This is the perfect example of the Pareto principle at work. Studies from linguists all over the world have shown the same incredible fact. The most common 1,000 words in English make up about 85% of everyday spoken language. Let that sink in for a moment. If you can master just the 1,000 most frequent words, you will be able to understand the vast majority of conversations, TV shows, and podcasts. If you expand that to the most common 3,000 words, you will be able to understand around 95% of most common texts and conversations. This is your 20%. Actually, it's more like 2%, the tiny fraction of vocabulary that gives you almost all of your understanding. The other 167,000 words are the 80% of vocabulary that you will only see 20% of the time. These are specialized words for science, literature, or academic subjects. You don't need them for everyday fluency. As the famous polyglot Tim Ferriss says in his book, The 4-Hour Chef, which has a large section on language learning, what is the minimum effective dose? What are the 20% of activities that will get me 80% of the results? For vocabulary, the minimum effective dose is a small number of high-frequency words. Your mission is not to learn all the words. It is to learn the right words. Practical tips to learn the right 20% of vocabulary. So, how do you find and learn these magical, high-impact words? 1. Use a frequency list. You don't have to guess what the most common words are. Experts have already done the work for you. The Oxford 3000. This is a list created by language experts and teachers at Oxford University. It is a list of the 3,000 most important words to learn in English. You can find this list for free online. Make this list your best friend. Graded readers. These are books that are specially written for language learners at different levels, A1, A2, B1, etc. They use a limited number of high-frequency words. Reading these books is a fantastic way to see the most important vocabulary used in context again and again. 2. Pay attention to what you hear and see. When you are watching a movie or listening to a podcast, keep a small notebook with you. When you hear a word you don't know, don't stop and look it up immediately. Instead, listen for it again. If you hear the same unknown word 2 or 3 times in one show, that is a sign that it is a common word. That is a word worth learning. 3. Use spaced repetition systems, SRS. It's not enough to just see a word. You have to remember it. The most effective way to do this is with spaced repetition systems. Anki and Memrise. These are popular flashcard apps that use an algorithm to show you a word just before you are about to forget it. It's an incredibly efficient way to move words into your long-term memory. You can download pre-made decks with the most common 1,000 or 3,000 English words. This is the perfect 80-20 tool. You spend a minimal amount of time, maybe 15 minutes a day, for the maximum memory result. 4. Focus on verbs and nouns first. If you are just starting, focus your energy on the most important types of words: verbs, action words like go, have, be, say, and nouns, words for people, places, and things like time, person, year, way. Adjectives and adverbs are important, but you can communicate a lot with just simple verbs and nouns. By focusing your precious time and energy on the small percentage of words that do most of the work, you are applying the Pareto principle perfectly. You are building a strong foundation that will allow you to understand and speak about almost anything. Part 2. The 20% of grammar. Mastering the core structures. Next up is the topic that many English learners fear: grammar. A typical English grammar book for advanced learners can have hundreds of different topics: the present perfect continuous, the third conditional, passive voice and future tenses. It's a huge and complex system. But, just like with vocabulary, a small number of grammar rules do most of the work. You do not need to master every single rule to speak clearly and confidently. You need to focus on the vital 20% of grammar that is used in 80% of daily conversations. What is this core grammar? 1. The main tenses. You need to be able to talk about the past, the present, and the future. If you can master the past simple, I walked, the present simple, I walk, and the future with will or going to, I will walk, you can communicate almost any basic idea. Adding the continuous forms, I am walking, I was walking, is the next powerful step. 2. Basic sentence structure. The basic sentence structure in English is subject, verb, object, SVO. For example, Sarah, S, loves, V, coffee, O. Mastering this simple structure will allow you to build clear, correct sentences. 3. Question formation. Being able to ask questions is essential for conversation. You need to master how to form questions with be verbs: are you tired? Do or does: do you like coffee? And question words: who, what, where, when, why, how. 4. The most common modal verbs. Modal verbs are small words that change the meaning of the main verb. The most important ones are can, can't, should, shouldn't, would, and could. If you can master these few core areas, you will have the grammatical tools to handle 80% of your communication needs. The other, more complex grammar rules are important for advanced, nuanced expression, but they are not essential for fluency. Practical tips for mastering core grammar. Here is how you can focus your grammar practice for maximum impact. 1. Isolate and practice one structure at a time. Don't try to study the entire past tense in one day. Focus on one small part. For example, today you will only practice forming questions in the past simple with did. Did you go? Did she see? Spend 20 minutes doing exercises on just that one point until it feels easy. 2. Create your own examples. When you learn a new grammar structure, don't just read the examples in the book. Create your own sentences that are true for your life. If you are learning the present continuous, write sentences like, I am listening to a podcast right now. My mother is probably working in her garden. My friends are probably drinking coffee. Personal sentences are much more memorable. 3. Look for patterns, not rules. Sometimes thinking about grammar as a rule can be stressful. Instead, think of it as a pattern. Example from India. India has many different languages, but many of them share similar sentence structures. When learning English, an Indian speaker might find it helpful to see English grammar as a new set of patterns to recognize. Pay attention to the patterns in the English you hear. Notice how native speakers form questions. Notice the word order. Your brain is a natural pattern-finding machine. The more you expose it to correct patterns, the more it will learn. 4. Don't worry about perfection. Remember, the goal of communication is connection, not perfection. In the real world, even native speakers make grammar mistakes. Your goal is to be understood. If you say, "I go to the cinema yesterday," it's grammatically incorrect, but will people understand you? Yes, 100%. Focus on mastering the core structures so you can communicate clearly, and don't let the fear of making small mistakes stop you from speaking. As the author of Fluent in 3 Months, Benny Lewis says, "The key is to communicate from day one, not to wait until you are perfect." Focusing on the core 20% of grammar allows you to do just that. Part 3. The 20% of skills, prioritizing listening and speaking. When we talk about learning a language, we usually think of 4 main skills: reading, writing, listening, and speaking. All of them are important, but if your main goal is fluency, which we can define as the ability to have a confident conversation with a native speaker, then 2 of these skills are far more important than the others. The 20% of skills that will give you 80% of your conversational fluency are listening and speaking. Think about it. You can be an amazing reader of English literature and have a huge vocabulary, but if you can't understand what someone is saying to you in a noisy cafe, you are not fluent. You can write beautiful, grammatically perfect essays, but if you freeze when someone asks you for directions, you are not fluent. Reading and writing are often called passive skills. Listening and speaking are active or productive skills. They happen in real time and are the foundation of communication. Therefore, you should be spending a large majority of your study time, perhaps even 80% of it, actively listening and actively speaking. Practical tips for prioritizing active skills. Here is how to focus your time on the skills that matter most for fluency. 1. Practice active, not passive listening. Many learners put on an English podcast or a TV show in the background while they are doing something else. This is better than nothing, but it is passive listening. Active listening is a focused activity. How to listen actively. 1. Choose a short audio or video clip. 2 to 3 minutes is perfect. Listen the first time and just try to understand the main idea. What is the topic? Listen a second time with a transcript, a written version of the audio. Look up any important words you don't know. Listen a third time, this time without the transcript. Notice how much more you understand. Try to summarize the main points out loud in your own words. This process is intense, but one 10-minute session of active listening is more valuable than 1 hour of passive listening. 2. Speak from day one, even if it's just to yourself.
the biggest mistake learners make is waiting. They wait until they know enough vocabulary or master enough grammar before they start speaking. This is like trying to learn to swim by reading books about swimming. You have to get in the water. Talk to yourself. This might feel strange, but it is one of the most powerful and low-stress ways to practice speaking. Describe your day. Talk about your plans. Describe what you see out the window. The goal is to get your mouth used to making English sounds and to build the connection between your brain and your tongue. Shadowing, as we've mentioned before, is the technique of listening to a native speaker and trying to speak at the exact same time. It's an incredible workout for your pronunciation, rhythm, and intonation. Find a speaking partner. Use apps like HelloTalk or Tandem to find language exchange partners from all over the world. Commit to speaking for just 15 minutes, 2 or 3 times a week. This real-world practice is where you will make the most progress. 3. Focus on communication, not perfection. When you are practicing speaking, your goal is to get your message across. Use simple words. Use hand gestures. If you forget a word, describe it. For example, if you forget the word corkscrew, you can say, the thing you use to open a bottle of wine. This is what real communication looks like. By dedicating most of your practice time to the active skills of listening and speaking, you are directly training for the real-world goal of conversation. You are focusing on the 20% of skills that will deliver 80% of your fluency. Part 4. The 20% of topics. Talking about what matters to you. We've talked about the 20% of vocabulary, grammar, and skills. Now for the final piece of the puzzle, the 20% of topics. Think about your daily conversations in your own native language. What do you talk about? You probably talk about your job, your family, your hobbies, your plans for the weekend, the news, the last movie you watched. There is a core set of topics that make up 80% of your daily communication. One of the fastest ways to become fluent is to master the English you need to talk about your own life. It's interesting to learn vocabulary about space travel or 18th century philosophy, but is that the language you need to make friends, participate in a business meeting, or order a coffee? Probably not. Your personal 20% are the topics and situations that are most relevant to you. Practical tips for mastering your personal 20%. 1. Identify your survival topics. Imagine you are moving to an English-speaking country tomorrow. What are the first things you would need to talk about? Introducing yourself, your name, your country, your job, your family and your daily routine, your hobbies and interests, your work or your studies, ordering food, asking for directions, shopping. These are your core topics. You should prepare for them. 2. Prepare scripts for common situations. A script is not about memorizing a speech. It's about preparing the key vocabulary and phrases you will need for a specific situation. Example from a job interview. If you have a job interview in English, you know they will probably ask, "Tell me about yourself. What are your strengths? And why do you want this job?" Don't wait for the interview to think of your answers. Prepare them in advance. Write down the key vocabulary and phrases. Practice saying your answers out loud. This will give you incredible confidence. You can create scripts for any important topic, talking about your favorite movie, explaining your job, telling a story about your last vacation.
3. Learn the vocabulary for your passion. What do you love to do? Do you love cooking, soccer, video games, photography? Learning the English vocabulary for your hobbies is a fantastic 80-20 strategy. Why? It's motivating. You are learning about something you already love. It's memorable. The vocabulary is connected to real things and actions that you understand deeply. It opens up communities. You can join online forums, watch YouTube videos, and even make friends with people from other countries who share your passion. If you are a software developer from Brazil, for example, learning the English vocabulary for coding will be far more useful and motivating for you than learning the names of kitchen appliances. That is your 20%. By focusing on the language that is most relevant to your life, you are not just learning a language, you are building a tool that you can use immediately. This creates a positive cycle. The more you can use the language, the more motivated you are to learn, and the faster you become fluent. Conclusion: work smart, not just hard. So let's bring it all together. The Pareto principle, the 80-20 rule, is a powerful tool that can help us cut through the noise and focus on what truly matters in our English learning journey. It teaches us to stop trying to learn everything and instead to focus our energy on the vital few inputs that produce the vast majority of our results. We focus on the 20% of vocabulary, the 1,000 to 3,000 most common words that make up 80% of daily communication. We focus on the 20% of grammar, the core tenses and structures that allow us to build clear and effective sentences. We focus on the 20% of skills, listening and speaking, that are the foundation of real-world conversational fluency. And we focus on the 20% of topics, those related to our own lives, work, and passions, that make the language immediately useful and personal. This is not about being lazy. It's about being strategic. It's about respecting your time and energy. The goal is to create a learning system that is not only effective, but also sustainable and enjoyable. So here is your challenge for this week. Take out a piece of paper and become an 80-20 detective. Ask yourself, 1. What are the 20% of my learning activities that give me 80% of my progress and enjoyment? 2. What are the 80% of my activities that only give me 20% of my results? Am I spending too much time on activities that don't really help me speak or understand better? Identify one thing you can do more of, your 20%, and one thing you can do less of, your 80%. Maybe you will decide to spend more time speaking with a partner and less time memorizing random vocabulary lists. Maybe you will focus on one grammar point for the whole week instead of trying to study 3. Remember, progress does not come from doing more things, but from doing the right things. Thank you so much for joining me today on Let's Master English. I hope this idea has inspired you to look at your English routine in a new, more powerful way. Until next time, keep practicing and focus on what truly matters.